Robin, great to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I appreciate that you're busy and you've got plenty of other things that you could be doing. Um, I
Thanks,
wanted
Paul.
to I wanted to kick off by asking you about something that you said to me last time we spoke, which kind of stuck in my mind because I've never heard anyone say anything. You said to me, I spend more on candles for my staff than I do on lead generation. Now I mean, you must have a lot of staff and buy a lot of candles, maybe, or maybe, I mean, because I've never met anyone that doesn't spend any money on lead generation. I mean, just tell us about how that works and your business.
Yeah, so really our leads come primarily from one source. Well, two really. LinkedIn, number one. Number two is referrals. So we've been around for a long time, 26 years. And during the early years, we spent an inordinate amount of money on advertising
Yeah.
and placing ads all over the place. And, Google ads was like a nightmare. You spend a lot of money, you get a lot of click through, but, that's not really where the buyers are. It's not where the customers are. LinkedIn for us has been such an incredible resource because that's where people who are looking for a job primarily are going. I like the genuineness of LinkedIn. They can see me, I can see them, they follow me, they know I'm a real person, I own a real business. I provide a lot of advice, I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of LinkedIn Lives. So we really built our leads organically. And we have a constant steady stream because people are constantly and, always looking for a new job, especially in this economy. When we look at ad budgets, I mean, ours is like nil. And, most of our staff are ladies. And a few times a year, I'm like, okay, everybody, there's a bath and body sale. Let's everybody tell me, the top 10 candles that you want. And I'm going to buy them and send them to you. So, like I said, I spend more money on
I mean,
candles than I do
that's
on
impressive, I have to say. I mean, just for people that obviously don't know your business, I mean, just because you are in the kind of recruitment sort of people talent kind of space, but you've got a very different approach. I mean, just explain to people a little bit about your business and the bit that makes it special.
So, Storyline Resumes is really a resume company. We develop job search materials for our clients: resumes, LinkedIn profiles, bios, board resumes, all of that sort of thing. And then we also have something called Searchlight. Searchlight is a job search program. We don't recruit anybody, we don't place anybody, we don't find you a job. Our job is to give you all of the tools. Those tools sometimes include pep talks. They sometimes include tough love. They sometimes include you hearing things from someone who knows what they're talking about that maybe you didn't necessarily want to hear. Whatever the case may be, our approach is very human centered. So we're a writing company that doesn't use AI. We're a company that doesn't have our clients fill out questionnaires. We get on the phone, we jump into it with you, and we really get you thinking about who you are and what you've done and why you bring value. And that process in and of itself is really the game changer. You can go to any website and upload a bunch of stuff, and some tool or some person is going to write your resume. But with us, it's a very human driven, a very human centered process. And that truly makes all the difference.
And the other thing that we talked about last time is the importance of storytelling in both the way you kind of reach people and the way you help them communicate about what they do. I mean, just talk us through again. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the importance of storytelling, but a lot of people aren't. I mean, just talk people through how, why is that so important and how does it work?
Well, I mean, look, I think that having tools or materials for a job search at your disposal, that has been written with your genuine story in mind is the difference between going to a movie that was written by a brilliant screenwriter versus one written by AI.
Okay.
So the things that engage us, the things that make us cry, the things that make us laugh, that make us think, that make us want to dig deeper, want to get to know a character more, that comes from the brilliance of the writer. And that is sort of a lofty comparison to a resume, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Careers are not, I worked at ABC company from this year to that year, and I was graded on this or graded on that, and this was what my job was. The real greatness comes from the genuine story, what I call the shit show approach, or, the turnaround story, or, were you the hero? When you go into an organization and say you're an executive and that organization is a mess, you don't say on your resume, led turnaround strategies, blah, blah, blah. You say, this is what was broken. There was zero morale. Cells were, in the toilet. These are the things that I did to make it better. When I started, it was doing 12 million. When I left, it was doing 30. That statement, that story tells me something about you. So people who put on their resumes, I drove growth, or I completely rebuilt a sales team into, one of the best sales teams in the industry, and, we tripled our revenue. That tells me something about you. So the difference between those things is, like the comparison that I made between an award-winning screenwriter and an AI generated, script. That's the difference. It makes people engaged. I want to root for you. If I read your resume, I want to root for you. I'm going to be impressed by you. I want to know what you're going to come and do for me. Resumes and job searches and interviews are about solving problems. And if you're a person that can't tell me what problem you solve, because we all have plenty of problems, then I'm probably not going to pick you. That's what people miss.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you talk about, it being a problem-solving process. I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, it seems to me that we've lost that. And partly we've lost that because people are so good at stating facts. I worked for this company for 3 years. We did X, Y, and Z. And that's all fine, but it doesn't inspire, does it? It doesn't engage. It's the story of how those things fit together that is the bit that's interesting. Is that fair?
It's 100% fair. And I think that everyone is looking for inspiration, whether or not it's in your job, whether or not it's in somebody that you're hiring, whether or not it's in your performance or the passion that you have for your company. That's what sells, right? It's, if you follow media influencers, the people that are, at the top of their game, they have the ability to engage others and get them excited about something in a really organic way. No one wants to be sold to. And it's the same thing with your resume. Get me excited about what you have to offer, in a way that feels genuine instead of trying to sell me something. Everyone is tired of being solicited. And when you take it a step further, we tell folks that when you're interviewing for a job, don't be afraid to say, what's your problem? What's your pain?
Yeah.
What challenge are you having here? And then be able to, in a really specific and genuine way, talk about being able to solve that kind of problem with very specific examples from your experience. That's what people want. Yeah, we want people that sort of, talk like us and think like us, but ultimately I want somebody to come in and solve the problem that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what creates the value, and that's what people pay for, isn't it? Really, it's what you also say.
Right.
Let me ask you. I mean, I know it's a very, very successful business now. I mean, how did you kind of end up in that space? I mean, helping people with their resumes. I mean, it strikes me as, I mean, it's obviously a very valuable thing to be doing for people, but
Yeah.
quite an odd. I mean, I didn't leave school thinking I'm gonna help people with their resumes. I mean, where did the idea come from? How did you get into that world?
It was totally by accident. I actually worked in corporate America. I had one child at the time, and she was in kindergarten, and I was packing her up at 4 o'clock in the morning and dropping her off at my mother's house so I could commute to my office. I had a busy schedule. I was out of town a lot, and I just hit a wall. And I said to my husband one day, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work in corporate America. I want to be home with our daughter. We wanted to have other children, and the funny part about this, my husband and I both grew up poor. We both had great families. My parents are alive. They're in their 80s, wonderful folks. And my husband had wonderful parents as well. But we didn't have anything. We didn't have any money. My in-laws never owned a house until years later. We were actually able to buy my husband's mother's house so she could stay there. So being poor was not like a bad thing. It wasn't a negative thing. Yes, we were doing well because I had a really nice salary. But on the flip side, I wasn't really happy, and I wasn't afraid to be poor. And I always think back to making that decision. If I had been afraid to not have a fancy car or not be able to take 6 vacations a year or whatever, I never would have been able to do what I did. So, we had a really frank conversation about it. And we agreed that if I could find something to buy groceries every week, that he could float us for about a year until I figured out what it is that I wanted to do. So I quit a corporate job and became a waitress. I worked on my business during the day, got my daughter up out of bed and got her to school, worked on my business during the day. And then at night, whenever my husband would come home, I would go wait tables. And then we had our second child and I continued to do the same thing. And then I sort of lucked into it. I guess you could call it. Someone asked me, they knew that I was a writer. I had some HR background, I had some marketing background, and said, "Hey, can you help me write a resume?" And I was like, "Sure, I can write a resume." Well, I wrote one hell of a resume. The guy was an engineer, and I mean, it was literally weeks he got a job, and then he started sending me all of his engineer friends, and that's really how it started. So really, it was sort of a kitchen table affair. They would come to my house, and then
Yeah. And
and I
how
was
did
like, I'm going
you?
to go online. I'm going to get a website. I'm going to bring in people
Yeah.
regionally. And I would meet people out and I would hand them a floppy disk with their resume package on it and then hand me a check. And then I thought, man, I could do this further if I could do it
And let
online,
me
if I
ask
could
you,
get paid.
how did you realize, or where did the insight come from that the storytelling bit was the kind of key to success? Because I mean, lots of people have done stuffs around resumes. Your stuff is is very successful. How did where did the insight pop into your head that said the key to this is getting the storytelling right? I mean, when did that happen and how did that
I
happen?
think because looking at resumes, I had done some hiring. I had experience with onboarding new staff, and looking at resumes, I was almost always bored. And
Right.
often, it's storyline. It's sort of a funny tagline here. Like if you're looking at your own resume and you can't get through it, you're bored to tears. Just imagine someone who is
Yeah,
getting 100 or
that's a
200 or
very good
300,
point.
right? And that's kind of where I got the idea. And I thought, man, like this person sitting in front of me is so amazing. But what is reflected on this piece of paper is not doing it justice. And I thought, how can I do it justice? How can I explain in a snippet, or how can I get someone excited about what this person might have to offer? And that's really where the inspiration came from. And then we, through the years, we evolved in we started doing things like taking snippets from your performance review and putting it in a bubble on your resume. So, a reader of your resume could see, well, what do other people think about this person? And wow, that's really interesting. That's such an influential thing and such a simple approach. But everything we do has been very calculated.
Right. And in terms of the kind of people that come to you for this, I mean, you would assume somebody, I don't know, reasonably bright, got a degree or whatever, they would be okay to write their own resume, wouldn't they? I mean, what sort of people come to you for help with this?
Yeah, I think for us, the claim to fame really is the process, right? So, yes, can you sit down and write your own resume? Can you remember everything that happened 2 years ago in that job? Probably not. You're dialing it in, right? You're doing a cursory overview. Well, let me describe what my duties were, and you think that's enough, and it's never enough. When you come to somebody like us and we're sitting with you, we're on a phone call, we've got you for an hour, and we're saying to you, "Hey, Joe, tell me about this company. What was their revenue? Where did they play in their space? When you got here, what was going on with this position? Where were they struggling? Where were they failing? Tell me about your team. What did you do to fix it?" Blah, blah. The magic starts happening. The brain explodes, right? The light bulb goes off, and you're like, damn, I did a lot here. I didn't just come in and, grow revenue and align strategy. I built teams. I created morale. I had people that were dedicated and loyal to our business, to our products. The passion has to come through if you want people to pick up the passion that you have. And that's kind of where it all started. It's really the process that sets
And
everything apart.
and the other thing that I mean, I don't know much about that world, but the other thing that strikes me is that most of the CVs I've seen are short. They're one, two, three sides maybe. I mean, they're not a lot longer than that. I mean, so when I listen to you talk about helping people kind of express their passion and talk about the detail of the things that they've done, and bring a bit of excitement to the CV. I mean, I'm trying to, in my head, I'm trying to work out how do you do that on two sides of A4? I mean, that seems to me to be the challenge, if you like. I mean,
Yeah, it definitely is a challenge. Look, we work with people with 20 and 30-year careers. The fact of the matter is that we live in a society that we are very driven by a what have you done for me lately kind of mentality. So people aren't really necessarily interested in a full reckoning of your 30-year career. They're typically interested in your last two jobs. So we write resumes that I call top heavy. All of the information about your current position, if you've been in there a significant period of time, that's going to take up the majority of that first page of that resume. And then the second job and the third job. And as you get a little further back, we're
right.
really only going back and maybe touching on 15 years, because after that, things become irrelevant. We live in a world that moves so quickly,
Yeah.
from a technology, from a company, from a product, to what's hot, to what's not. What you did 20 years ago is not something that anybody is truly going to use to judge whether or not I'm bringing you in for an interview. So you kind of have to pick your battles. Our biggest problem with executives is they're sort of married to, these experiences that they had from a long time ago, and they think it's so important, and we kind of have to get them to disengage with that and kind of follow our set of rules to what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between being super, super experienced and being relevant. And, it's a line that we walk every day here.
Yeah. Yeah. And a line that you know how to manage much better than other people, I would have thought.
Yes.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you, as you built the business, I mean, to what extent have your own personal values shaped the way you've built the business? Because it seems to me that it kind of, I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but it kind of reflects you.
It does. I mean, it is definitely, I have to be a good steward of my own name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm involved in, everything. I'm a huge proponent of, working families, working mothers. We want to empower not only our customers, but our people as well. We're like general good eggs, right? People aren't walking on eggshells to ask for a day off or take a vacation. My daughter actually runs the day-to-day of Storyline, and we tell this funny story about how during the pandemic, we created a sick package. So anybody that on our staff that came down with COVID or got sick or whatever, we would just go to our Instacart account and we would click the sick package. And in this sick package was, the Vicks shower steamers, Mucinex, Advil, always chocolate, always, whatever. So we would do this thing and we would send it. And it's such a little thing, it's like maybe $50. It's such a little thing. But little things build loyalty. Little things say, I'm a human, you're a human. Yes, we're about business. Yes, we need to make money. It's, revenue, versus expense and all of that. But ultimately, we know that we don't exist without you. And we're brave enough to acknowledge that. And most companies will not do that. Everyone is dispensable, not here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so refreshing to hear that. Let me ask you about you being the CEO. I mean, to what extent, and this is really about the kind of, I know you've been building your business for quite a long time. One of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is AI.
Yeah.
And it's happening everywhere, isn't it? I mean, it's not going to go away again. I mean, the genie's out of that bottle without any shadow of a doubt. I
Yes.
mean, what does it mean to you to be a decision maker in the age of AI?
I think that, we've embraced it wholeheartedly, for things that make sense to us. So for instance, I was running a report this morning that, a few years ago would have taken me 3 days to get through. I was looking for clients that ordered certain levels of packages, over the past couple of years, and we're doing, sort of a marketing promotion around our Searchlight program. That would have taken me a long time to go through, or somebody in our team to go through. I did it this morning. I dropped it into AI and I said, identify every person who purchased a package at this level and above, give me their name, the date of their purchase, and their email address. And, 20 seconds later, it was done. So you've got to use AI for things that enhance the functionality of your business, the things that nobody wants to do. I don't want to sit and go through spreadsheets for, 2 days. So we adopt it. but our team already knows we will never ever be using AI to write your resume or a cover letter. There's ways that we do use AI in the development process, and it's typically around keyword identification, but everything that we do has to be genuine and written by a human, because in a market that is absolutely flooded with top talent, millions of people have lost their job in the US over the past couple of years. There's more talent on the market than I've ever seen before.
Wow.
The things that we do are the things that get you, past the gatekeepers and in the door.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you describe it that way. That your point about there being so much talent on the market. I mean, I think it's probably similar here in the UK. To what extent would you say you have a sort of a collaborative mindset? I mean, what comes across when I've spoken to you in the past is that you sort of really seem to enjoy working with. I mean, I guess it will be a lot of people ultimately.
Yes.
I mean, have you got? Would you say you're a real collaborator? Is that in your DNA?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in my DNA. I mean, even, with my team, with our PR people, with our marketing people, I work with a lot of folks on LinkedIn. I do a lot of LinkedIn events. I do recruiter roundtables with recruiters that
Right.
can give job. Ultimately, I want to help job seekers find roles that make their lives better, whether they buy resumes or not. I think that's the difference. I'm not only an advocate for job seekers that pay us to write their resume, I'm an advocate for job seekers everywhere. So that's the difference between, me that owns a company and maybe somebody else who is only really looking at their own interests. It is better for all of us if we are healthily employed, if we are happy in our jobs, if we are armed with the knowledge of what it takes to navigate this market. That's why I spend so much of my time doling out free advice and doing podcasts and live events and all of those things, because ultimately it's better for all of us if the economy is good and the job market is strong.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it for me, it comes that sort of sense of you wanting to help people kind of really
Yeah.
comes across, which in itself is kind of reassuring. Well, I mean that's how I would perceive it. Let me ask you again about the journey. So, to what extent, as you've been building the business, have you had to, if you like, step beyond your expertise?
Yeah, I mean, I got into a very comfortable zone where we were doing a lot of work manually. So, would bring a new client on board,
Mm.
would schedule them with an interviewer, and then we were doing a lot of emailing back and forth. Here's your draft and send me your homework. And it was extremely time consuming and very, very labor intensive. And right before the pandemic, my oldest daughter, who I started this business so I could put her on the school bus, she was leaving her job as a book editor in New York City. She had sort of run the gamut. She was in her 20s, like 26, 27, and she came home. And she had just soured on New York City. The expense was crazy. I always joke that we tried to tell her whenever she went to school in New York to be, an editor, that there's no money in this. But, your kids have to learn for themselves that there's no money in book editing. But anyway, so after a really fun run in New York, she decided to come home and sort of regroup. Well, then the pandemic started. So I said, well, obviously you can't go back to New York. You're going to have to stay here. That'd be terrible. And it was wonderful. And we had a great time. And she was home for a year. But I said, come to work for me. And she said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, why don't you, help with our quality team? Look through resumes and, see how we can improve upon them, or if anything stands out, or, should we be maybe adapting and making changes, blah, 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 blah. Well, within a year, she was basically running the organization. She is so brilliant. She had me invest a copious amount of money in technology. She started to automate everything. We got portals and platforms and all of the things. So, when you welcome that, whether it was my kid or someone else that comes into your organization and says, hey, I have an idea to make things easier, listen. And she was really the person that kind of helped us go to the next level and the level above that.
Yeah, yeah, that must be great, actually.
It's so great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get that. And let me ask you about. I mean, it's a competitive world that you're in, though. I mean, to what? I mean, and you were just talking about the kind of collaborative piece a second ago.
Yeah.
To what extent would you say you play to win or you play it safe? I mean, how are you on the kind of the
Oh, I'm a
risky
gambler. I
bit?
mean, I definitely play to win. I mean, we have done things that we've launched that have crashed and burned in a few weeks. And then we've done other things that, propelled us to new heights of success. I'm always willing to take a gamble. I'm always willing to take a risk. I'm not really money driven and never have been. Is money nice? Yes, of course it is. I'm win driven. I want to win. I like to win. I want our clients to win. I want to be the best at what we do. There's a lot of one-off resume writers. There aren't very many large resume companies, and I think that we are right there at the top at being the best.
Yeah, yeah. And do you, well, let me ask you, so as you've been building the company, have there been any sort of real surprises along the way? I mean, I mean, I get a sense when I speak to you that you're pretty clear about where you're going with things.
Yes.
Have you had any big surprises where you thought, God, I didn't think it was going to kind of turn out like that? I mean, have you had that happen?
When I first started it, I thought I would work with, engineers, or I thought I would work with HR people or nurses or whatever. I can't tell you how surreal it was through the years. Back in the days when we had actual physical landlines and answering machines on our desk, that I would be at work in my pajamas in Western Pennsylvania, a nobody kid from a small town that grew up with nothing. And I would glance at my phone and the caller ID would say the White House or NASA or the New York Times or somebody from the stock exchange or somebody from Goldman. I mean, the amount of people and the clients and the brain power and the folks that I remember being on the phone with people doing interviews and Googling them, and they were on the cover of Forbes magazine. Like, it was like, how did this girl who didn't really know anything about resume writing get to be someone who was capable of working with these kinds of people, the people that you look up to, the people that you think are the smartest people in the world? And it turns out you learn. I can speak any industry language. I can talk to engineers and supply chain and CEOs and CFO. I can speak any of it because I learned and absorbed it along the way. And I think the real key to our success as an organization is that myself and everyone that I bring on are endlessly curious about other people. And that's the real,
I guess you're
that's
going to
the,
have to be curious to be able to help them write a
yes.
CV, aren't you?
My husband tells anyone who gets into a car with us to be prepared to have their life story laid out in front of them from the time they get in till the time that we arrive at our destination, because I never stop asking questions.
I can believe that. Let me ask you about the kind of corporate memory thing or capture. I mean, how do you make sure, given how quickly things have grown in your world, how do you make sure that the learning from the past is kind of captured? So when people make mistakes, you learn from that and then you're able to apply that going forward. I mean, how do you, in your setting, how do you make sure that that always happens?
Well, everything we do here, we're not stuck on an idea of what a resume should be, other than it should be a good story. We evolve, just like every other business. I think when companies start losing their edge, it's because they can't let go of an ideology that has always worked for them in the
Yeah.
past, and they're unable or unwilling to adapt. They get really protective of sort of their core philosophy about how to do business. And you can't do that. You have to be changing all the time. I mean, just look in the past. I mean, you and I are both old enough to remember life before cell phones and the internet. I
Yeah.
mean, look how quickly things have gone from the Industrial Revolution to what is happening with
Mm.
AI right now. I mean, it's not been a long period of time, right? So you have to be constantly willing to look with a critical eye and say, is what I'm doing relevant? And if the answer is no, then you need to either be relevant or get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely get your point about being willing to adapt, but it's easier to say than do. I mean, how do you, because there's obviously a lot of vested interest in sticking with the way things are done currently. I mean, how do you
Sure.
kind of keep your people? sort of flexible and able to adapt?
Well, I think that it's really the ideas come from the people. So, like our frontline people are our interviewers and our writers. And so
Right.
we're constantly asking, what are you saying? What do we need to do different? When you're talking to your recruiter friends and your hiring manager friends, when I'm talking to my recruiter, and I say, what do we need to be doing different here? We're always open to interpretation from other people that
Right.
are in the peripherals, the people that are doing the hiring, the executive leadership teams, what they want to see from candidates. So we're always listening and taking that in and making those changes. That is, I'm not arguing with anybody. So if someone from human resources would come to me that I respected and said, hey, listen, we don't really want to see this stuff on resumes anymore, I'd be like, done. Let's take this off resumes. I don't want to see it anymore. Like, I listen and I take that all in, and I don't try to argue and say, no, that's really important, that's relevant, blah, blah, blah. They're the experts. They're the ones that are doing the hiring. So we're always open to other people's opinions.
But
And
you're
we
sa-
really
you're you're saying listen to customers is what you're saying.
Absolutely. We listen to customers. We listen to our partners. We work with a lot of recruiters and headhunters that are watching the market evolve, and how quickly companies want to hire and how quickly they want to get through candidates and sort of refine down whether or not this person is a good fit, how they're using AI tools. So we're taking that in all of the time and making those adjustments.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing that strikes me is that it's the pace of change that must be difficult to manage, really. I mean, listening to customers is one thing, but if they're saying, if they say one thing today and then in a month's time they're saying something difficult, it can be difficult to keep up, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to take all of those things with a grain of salt. I'm
Yeah.
certainly not saying that, anyone who says, hey, you should do this or do that, that we're doing that. But if we've got trusted partners, if we've got folks that we've worked with for years, yeah, I'm listening to what they have to say. And we do make those changes.
Yeah. Let me ask you about your team. How do you equip, if you like, your people to make difficult decisions if you're not around?
Well, my daughter really runs the day to day. Everybody is pretty autonomous here. We're definitely
Right.
not micromanagers. Everybody works from home. There is communication all day long. We're in Slack all day long. It's just like, I actually think working from home is such a beautiful thing for many, many reasons. But I've never worked in an office where I've been as communicative with the team that I am
Right.
working from home with one in a Slack channel.
Right. That's so interesting because most
Yeah.
people would say it's the
So
opposite.
people, yeah, they do make decisions, and look at it this way, Paul. My sort of the running joke at this company is always, Robin says, we're not brain surgeons, right? Yes. Is it an urgent thing to have a resume done, especially if you're facing an opportunity that you don't want to slip away? But nothing really is an emergency. We are not saving lives here. So when I tell my staff, we're not brain surgeons, they know that what I mean is that there isn't that kind of urgency. So think through things, make smart decisions, and everyone has the autonomy to make a decision for themselves.
And
And
would
I'm
you,
not always around. They have
yeah,
to do those things.
yeah. And would you say that as you've built the business, would you say that how you define effective or good leadership, would you say that that's changed over the time that you've been building the business? Are you a
Yeah,
different
I
CEO
think that
now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'm softer now. Back in the day, as we were really scaling and we were so over the top busy, there was a drive to keep up with everything. Emails had to be answered within a certain period of time. There was only a certain percentages of phone calls that could go to voicemail a day. We had to be addressing and engaging and talking one-on-one with humans, and it was just busy. I mean, we were just slammed all the time. And I remember, coming in the office at 4:30 in the morning and going through hundreds of emails before the staff got in at 8 or 8:30. And do we still do that? Am I still in at 4:30? Yes. But the urgency of it has gotten a little less crazy. Now it's like, okay, as long as we're returning that email within a couple of hours, we still have a rule that all phone calls have to be returned within one business day. It's not like back then I was like, to the office manager, okay, that person called 15 minutes ago, they left a voicemail. Did you get back to them? And she'd be like, nope, not yet. I'm in the middle of it. And I'd say, okay, well, go ahead and get back. Like, everything became very much targeted around capturing that business. Whereas now it doesn't feel the same.
Mm. And in terms of decision making, when you look back, what would you say has cost you more money? Bad decisions or delayed decisions, things that you should have done quicker?
Delayed decisions, without a doubt. There were so many things that I think that, for me, not that I was hesitant to embrace technology, but I always loved our sort of hands-on approach until it became overwhelming. So it's one thing to do,
Mm.
you're a customer, we're going to onboard you, and we're going to send a couple of emails when you have 10 customers. But now we have 200 customers a week. That wouldn't be possible. There would just be someone who 20 hours a day would be sending emails to writers and assigning things. But
Yeah.
the sort of delay, because I wanted to keep everything hands on, definitely cost us. And I'm so glad that, my daughter came in and said, "Hey, this is crazy, Mom. You really need to invest in this and that and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Okay."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we did.
Pretty good advice, sounds to me.
Very good advice.
And what would you say is has been the most costly business decision or most costly business lesson that you've had to learn?
Um, I would say that the most costly business lesson is that not every solution is right for you. So to kind of circle back to the beginning where you said about how I spend more money on candles than I did on advertising. I mean, it took me years to dig out from the debt, from the money that I spent on advertising the
Right.
business in the first years, because that's what we were told, right? You're a business, you need to advertise, you need to find a partner. I remember doing Super Pages ads for like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. I mean, that was 20 years ago. That was a lot of money. In a lot of the platforms, you should invest in this and you should invest in this, and everything sort of gets out of control. Well, we weren't very big and we weren't making a whole lot of money at the outset, and I kept putting everything on credit cards until I'd max one out, and then I'd take another credit card just to keep everything going. And now I wish that, lesson learned, of course those are paid, that I would have done things a little differently, that I would have trusted my own instincts instead of listening to what people tell
Yeah. Yeah.
me I needed to do to run a business.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point about trusting your instincts. And the marketing thing is a very interesting one as well, because I've seen lots of money spent on marketing that doesn't work, which is what you're saying, yeah, because it works for some businesses, but not for others. And I'm a great believer that if you have to have a conversation with somebody before they're going to buy something, I mean, spending a lot of money on adverts isn't going to help, is it? You've got to have
It's not.
conversations with people.
No, I mean, look, we spend a little money sort of directing people to our calendar page, so they pick an appointment time. But really, I mean, marketing is so hit or miss. Get one really great viral post on social media that'll fuel your business for a month. I mean, it's not, it's not really marketing, it's organic. So I'm not paying anyone to do that. I'm not paying anyone to
Mm.
tell me how ads programs work, because we're not going to invest in that. Marketing for us means more brand and brand awareness. It means more public appearances. It means a little more PR. I do a lot of television, I do a lot of news shows. Me talking to you today, last week I did Good Morning San Francisco. I mean, I get out in front of millions of people. That's what drives our business.
Well, yeah, yeah, no, I can believe that. Let me ask you about the flip side to what we've been talking. We've been talking about some of the challenges involved in building a business. I mean, in terms of where you're going next, I mean, what are the opportunities, do you think, and what is it that excites you about the next stage of developing the business?
So we're actually branching out into a new line of business. We're going B2B, so business to business. A lot of companies that are laying people off, they purchase outplacement services.
Yeah.
We're getting into that business. A lot of organizations that do business with the government. Anytime you're answering a bid or an RFP or a proposal, you've got to produce the resumes and the bios of your principals, so that whoever is entertaining whether or not you're getting that bid understands that you've got quality and valuable people on your side that understand how this process works. We're going after that business. So I never really thought that, that's something that we would get into, but why not? It's such a lucrative and valuable market, and it's going to be sort of a new frontier for us.
Yeah, and there's a direct connection between what your, as it were, capabilities are, what your skills are,
Yeah,
or the thing that makes you special. There's a direct kind of correlation between that and the
there
opportunity.
is. Yes.
Yeah, so I can see why that's exciting. In terms of looking back again, if you were to offer a piece of advice to a new CEO, a rookie CEO, what would it be?
The better you treat your people, the more successful your company is going to be.
Right. Robyn, that's a fabulous bit of advice to end the interview on. I mean, I think that's absolutely, I mean, it's just a very smart piece of advice, really. Treat your people well, and they'll treat your customers well, and the customers will treat you well. Seems to me to be
Right.
pretty sensible advice, really. So thank you for making time to come and have a chat. Thank you for sharing that story, and good luck going forward. I mean, those opportunities that you're exploring, they look really exciting. So I can see why, you're optimistic about what's going to happen
Right.
next.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Good to speak to you, Robyn. See you soon. Bye bye.
Good call.